in the quiet moments between day and night, when the world settles into gentle silence and our souls seek peace. There exists a presence that has walked alongside humanity since the beginning of time. His name is Raphael, which means God heals. And he is one of heaven's most beloved messengers, an archangel whose very essence radiates divine compassion and restoration. Imagine, if you will, celestial light filtering through clouds like golden honey, and in that sacred radiance stands a figure of perfect gentleness. Neither demanding attention nor shrinking from need, but simply present, ready to heal whatever aches within your heart or body. For thousands of years, this divine physician has touched the lives of countless souls, walking dusty roads with lonely travelers, bringing sight to the blind and whispering hope into desperate hearts. Tonight, let yourself be carried into these ancient stories that have brought comfort to millions across the centuries. Find a comfortable position, perhaps close your eyes, and allow these sacred narratives to wash over you like a healing balm. Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Together, we create a community of seekers finding solace in timeless wisdom. As we begin this journey, feel yourself stepping into a realm where heaven touches earth, where miracles unfold with quiet grace, and where healing comes not with fanfare, but with the gentle touch of divine love. High above the noise and chaos of our earthly existence, beyond the reach of time and the touch of decay, there exists a realm of perfect harmony, where light itself seems to breathe with consciousness. This is the celestial court, the very throne room of the Almighty, where 7 magnificent archangels stand in eternal worship, their beings pulsing with divine purpose and unconditional love. Picture, if you can, this sacred space where colors exist that have no earthly names, where music plays that makes our finest symphonies sound like whispers, and where time moves not in the frantic rush we know, but in the peaceful rhythms of eternity. Here, each angelic being reflects a different aspect of God's infinite nature. Michael with his warrior's courage, Gabriel with his messenger's clarity, and Raphael with his healer's gentle touch. Raphael stands among these mighty beings not as one who dominates or overwhelms, but as one who draws near with infinite tenderness. His very presence speaks of restoration, of broken things made whole, of pain transformed into peace. Where Michael's sword cuts through deception and Gabriel's trumpet announces divine truth, Raphael's hands carry the warm touch of divine love, reaching across the vast expanse between heaven and earth to caress wounded hearts and mend fractured lives. In this celestial hierarchy, Raphael serves as heaven's physician, but his healing extends far beyond what any earthly doctor could accomplish. His touch doesn't merely mend bones or cure diseases, though he certainly does both, but reaches into the deepest recesses of the human soul, where our truest wounds fester in darkness. He heals the invisible injuries that keep us awake at night, the guilt that gnaws at our peace, the fear that steals our joy, the loneliness that makes us feel forgotten by both heaven and earth. The ancient mystics understood that Raphael's healing light carries within it the very essence of divine love. When he touches a blind man's eyes, he doesn't merely restore physical sight, but opens the inner vision that allows the soul to see God's goodness in every circumstance. When he guides a traveler through dangerous paths, he doesn't simply provide physical protection, but strengthens the spiritual courage needed to navigate life's most treacherous passages. This divine physician works through relationship, through presence, through the mysterious alchemy of love meeting need. He doesn't heal from a distance like some cosmic technician, but draws close, walks alongside, shares the journey. In the celestial court, where perfection is the natural state, Raphael chooses to involve himself intimately with our broken world, carrying heaven's wholeness into earth's brokenness. The contrast between heaven's perfect order and earth's beautiful chaos creates the space where Raphael's ministry flourishes. Heaven needs no healing, for nothing there is broken. Earth, in all its magnificent struggle, provides endless opportunities for divine love to express itself through restoration. And Raphael serves as the bridge between these realms, carrying heaven's healing into earth's need, transforming our pain into purpose, our wounds into wisdom. Consider how this divine order provides profound comfort in our chaotic world. While we struggle with uncertainty, Raphael operates from a realm of perfect knowledge. While we wrestle with limitations, he draws from infinite resources. While we fear abandonment, he remains eternally present, Never too busy, never too tired, never too overwhelmed by the magnitude of human suffering to notice our individual pain. The celestial light that emanates from Raphael's being carries within it every healing frequency needed for complete restoration. It's a light that penetrates darkness without harsh judgment, that exposes wounds not to shame, but to heal, that reveals brokenness not to condemn, but to restore. This is the light that has shone across human history, touching lives in every generation, adapting to every culture while maintaining its essential nature of divine compassion. As we contemplate this magnificent being who chose to leave heaven's perfection to walk earth's dusty roads, we begin to understand that we are not alone in our struggles, not forgotten in our pain, not abandoned in our deepest need. Raphael's very existence proclaims that heaven cares deeply about our earthly journey, that divine love is not distant and theoretical, but present and practical, touching our lives in ways both miraculous and mundane. This understanding transforms our perspective on suffering and healing. We begin to see our struggles not as evidence of divine abandonment, but as opportunities for divine encounter. Our wounds become gateways for grace. Our brokenness becomes the very place where heaven's healing power can be most clearly demonstrated. In the ancient city of Nineveh, where the Tigris River carved its way through fertile Mesopotamian soil and merchants from distant lands mingled in crowded marketplaces, there lived a man whose faithfulness to God would become legendary. Tobit was his name, and though exile had torn him from his beloved homeland of Israel, his devotion to the Almighty remained unshakable, like a deeply rooted tree that bends with storms but never breaks. Picture this man in his daily routines, rising before dawn to offer prayers toward Jerusalem, carefully observing dietary laws even when surrounded by pagan practices, and most remarkably, risking his own safety to bury the bodies of his fellow Israelites who had been executed and left exposed. This last act of mercy, performed under cover of darkness with trembling hands and a beating heart, would ultimately lead to both his greatest trial and his most extraordinary blessing. One fateful evening, after secretly burying yet another victim of royal persecution, Tobit returned home exhausted and ritually unclean. Following the law's requirements, he slept outside in his courtyard, unaware that sparrows nested in the wall above his resting place. As he lay there under the vast canopy of stars, those same stars that had guided Abraham and would guide the wise men to Bethlehem, warm sparrow droppings fell directly into his eyes, creating white films that gradually stole his sight. The onset of blindness came not suddenly, like a curtain dropping, but slowly, like twilight creeping across the sky. First, the sharp edges of familiar objects began to blur. Then colours faded, as if someone were gradually draining the vibrancy from his world. Finally, even the distinction between light and darkness began to fade, until Tobit found himself living in a twilight world where shadows replaced certainty and every step required faith. Imagine the weight of this darkness. Not just the physical inability to see, but the crushing sense that perhaps God had abandoned him. Here was a man who had sacrificed comfort for conscience, safety for service, and now he sat in his courtyard like Job on his ash heap, wondering if his faithfulness had been foolishness. His wife Anna, once patient and supportive, began to speak with sharp edges in her voice, her words cutting deeper than any sword. "Where are your righteous deeds now?" she would ask, her frustrations spilling over into cruel accusations. In his despair, Tobit prayed a prayer that echoes the cry of every human heart that has ever felt abandoned by heaven. "It would be better for me to die than to live, because I have heard false reproaches, and great is the sorrow within me. Command that I be released from my distress to go to my everlasting abode. Do not turn your face away from me." It was a prayer born from the deepest midnight of the soul, when faith feels like foolishness and hope seems like cruelty. But even as Tobit prayed this desperate prayer in Nineveh, hundreds of miles away in the Median city of Ecbatana, another voice was crying out to heaven with equal anguish. Sarah, daughter of Raguel, was also praying for death to release her from unbearable shame. 7 times she had been given in marriage, and 7 times her husbands had died on their wedding night, killed by the demon Asmodeus, who desired to possess her for himself. The gossip of servants and the whispered accusations of neighbours had driven her to the same breaking point that had brought Tobit to his knees. These 2 prayers, rising simultaneously from 2 broken hearts in 2 different cities, reached heaven at precisely the same moment. And in that divine synchronicity, Raphael received his commission, not to answer one prayer or the other, but to weave their separate sorrows into a single story of redemption that would bless not just them, but generations yet unborn. The solution would come through Tobit's son Tobias, a young man on the threshold of adulthood, filled with that mixture of eagerness and uncertainty that marks every generation's passage into maturity. When Tobit remembered a debt owed to him by a relative in Media 10, talents of silver left with Gabael in the City of Rages, he saw an opportunity to provide for his family's future while giving his son the experience of independent travel. But the journey to Media was fraught with dangers that would challenge any seasoned traveller, let alone a youth on his first major expedition. Bandits haunted the mountain passes, wild animals prowled the lonely stretches between cities, and the very route itself wound through territories where a young Jewish traveller might face suspicion or worse. Tobit knew his son would need a guide, someone experienced in the ways of the road and familiar with the languages and customs of the lands between Nineveh and Rages. It was then that Raphael appeared, though neither Tobit nor Tobias recognized his divine nature. He came in the form of Azarias, claiming to be the son of Ananias, a relative from their own tribe. His appearance was perfectly ordinary, dusty from travel, carrying the worn gear of an experienced guide, speaking with the easy confidence of one who had walked many roads and seen many lands. Nothing about his outward appearance suggested the celestial glory that was his true nature, for angels excel at becoming exactly what human need requires. The negotiation was conducted in the practical manner of all such arrangements. Terms were agreed upon, references checked as thoroughly as possible, and preparations made for departure. But as Raphael stood there in Tobit's courtyard, agreeing to guide young Tobias for wages and board, heaven itself was setting in motion a plan that would address not only the immediate needs of travel and debt collection, but the deeper healing that two families desperately needed. What followed was a journey that began as a simple business trip, but became an odyssey of faith, love, and divine intervention. As Tobias and his mysterious guide set out from Nineveh with the family dog trotting alongside. A detail that speaks to the story's deep humanity. They were embarking on more than a journey across physical distance. They were walking into a narrative crafted by divine love, where every step had purpose, every encounter held meaning, and every challenge served the greater goal of healing and restoration. The road ahead would lead them through adventures that tested courage, encounters that revealed character, and ultimately to discoveries that would transform not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone they touched. For when heaven intervenes in human affairs, the ripple effects extend far beyond the immediate recipients of grace, touching generations with the enduring power of divine love. In the ancient world, where the line between physical and spiritual reality was understood to be far thinner than modern minds often perceive, healing was recognized as a divine art that addressed the whole person, body, soul, and spirit working in harmonious unity. Raphael, whose very name declares his nature as God heals, embodies this holistic approach to restoration, working through methods that transform not just symptoms, but the deeper sources of human suffering. Picture the temple courtyards of antiquity, where those seeking healing would gather in the early morning light, their faces etched with a particular kind of hope that belongs only to those who have exhausted human remedies. These weren't simply medical clinics, but sacred spaces where the desperate came to encounter divine power, where the impossible was not only possible, but expected. The air itself seemed thick with anticipation, heavy with incense, and lighter with the whispered prayers of hearts that had nowhere else to turn. Raphael's healing differs fundamentally from human medicine in its approach and scope. Where human physicians must work within the limitations of natural law, divine healing operates from the realm where all natural laws originate. Where medical intervention often addresses symptoms while leaving deeper causes untouched, Raphael's touch reaches into the very source of disorder, restoring the divine pattern that existed before brokenness entered the picture. Consider how this divine physician approaches each case with infinite patience and perfect understanding. He sees not just the presenting problem, the blind eyes, the withered limb, the troubled mind, but the entire tapestry of circumstances that led to this moment of need. He perceives the generational patterns that may have contributed to the condition, the emotional wounds that opened doorways to physical illness, the spiritual conflicts that manifested as bodily distress. When Raphael restores sight to Tobit's eyes, The healing begins not with the physical application of the fish's gall, but with the deeper restoration of faith that had been damaged by years of suffering and darkness. The white films that covered Tobit's eyes were merely the visible manifestation of a spiritual blindness that had crept in through disappointment and despair. True healing required addressing both the symptom and its source, both the physical condition and the heart condition that allowed it to take root. The sensory experience of divine healing carries its own unique characteristics that distinguish it from natural recovery. Those who have experienced Raphael's touch often describe a warmth that begins deep within and radiates outward, a sensation of light that has nothing to do with visual perception, but everything to do with spiritual illumination. There's a sense of coming home to oneself, of being restored not just to health but to wholeness, not just to function but to purpose. This healing warmth doesn't burn or overwhelm, but embraces with the perfect temperature of love itself. It's the warmth of a mother's touch on a fevered child's forehead, magnified by divine power but retaining all its tenderness. It's the warmth of sunlight after a long winter, carrying within it the promise of renewed life and fresh beginnings. Those who experience it often weep, not from pain, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being truly seen, truly known, and truly loved. The process of divine healing often unfolds in layers, like an onion being carefully peeled back to reveal its heart. Surface symptoms may disappear quickly, but deeper healing takes time, requiring the patient cooperation of the one being healed. Raphael works with infinite gentleness, never forcing a pace that would overwhelm the human spirit, never demanding more faith than can honestly be mustered, never withdrawing his presence when progress seems slow. In contrast to the sometimes frantic pace of modern medical care, divine healing operates in God's time, which is always perfect time. There's no rushing the process, no shortcuts to bypass necessary steps, no quick fixes that ignore underlying issues. This can be challenging for those accustomed to instant solutions, but the thoroughness of divine healing ensures that what is restored remains restored, that what is healed stays healed. Raphael's healing ministry extends beyond individual restoration to encompass the healing of relationships, communities, and even environmental circumstances that contribute to human suffering. When he heals one person, the ripple effects often touch everyone in that person's sphere of influence. The blind man who receives sight becomes a witness to divine power. The healed woman returns to her family with renewed capacity to love and serve. The restored marriage becomes a lighthouse of hope for other struggling couples. The tools Raphael uses in his healing work span both natural and supernatural realms. Sometimes he works through the medicinal properties of herbs and fish gall, showing that God's healing power often operates through the natural world he created. Other times, he works through supernatural intervention that bypasses natural processes entirely, demonstrating that divine power is not limited by physical laws. But perhaps most importantly, Raphael works through relationship, through the mysterious alchemy that occurs when divine love encounters human need in the context of faith and trust. His healing touch is never clinical or impersonal, but always carries the warmth of genuine care, the strength of unwavering commitment, and the gentleness of perfect understanding. This relational aspect of divine healing explains why it often involves not just the person seeking healing, but their entire support network. Families must often journey together through the healing process, learning to release control, deepen faith, and expand their understanding of what wholeness really means. Communities may be called to provide practical support, emotional encouragement, and spiritual covering for those undergoing divine restoration. The patience required for this kind of healing can test everyone involved, but the results justify the process. Those who experience Raphael's healing don't just recover from their ailments. They often emerge with deeper compassion for others who suffer, stronger faith in divine providence, and clearer understanding of their purpose in life. Their healing stories become sources of hope for others facing similar challenges, creating a network of witnesses to divine love's practical power. Modern medicine, for all its remarkable advances, still struggles with the mystery of why some people heal and others don't, why identical treatments produce different results, why hope and despair seem to influence physical outcomes. Divine healing embraces these mysteries, working through them rather than being limited by them, recognizing that each person's healing journey is as unique as their fingerprint. requiring individualized attention from the divine physician who knows every heart's deepest need. The ancient roads that connected the great cities of antiquity were arteries of commerce and culture, but they were also corridors of constant danger, where every journey required courage that bordered on faith. Imagine the caravan routes that stretched across Mesopotamian deserts, where mirages danced in the heat and bandits waited in rocky outcroppings for unwary travelers. Picture the mountain passes, where a single misstep could send both man and beast tumbling into ravines, where sudden storms could transform familiar paths into death traps of ice and snow. Into this world of perilous travel, Raphael emerged as heaven's designated protector of those who must venture into the unknown. His guardianship extends far beyond simple physical protection, encompassing the emotional courage needed to leave familiar surroundings, the wisdom required to navigate foreign customs, and the spiritual strength necessary to maintain faith when surrounded by uncertainty. When young Tobias set out from Nineveh with his mysterious guide, he was participating in a tradition as old as humanity itself, the journey into the unknown that marks every significant transition in human experience. The nervousness that fluttered in his stomach, the excitement that quickened his pulse, the mixture of anticipation and anxiety that kept him awake the night before departure. These were the same emotions felt by every traveler who has ever stepped beyond the boundaries of the familiar into the vast unknown. But with Raphael as his guide, Tobias's journey carried a quality of divine protection that transformed ordinary travel into sacred pilgrimage. The angel's presence didn't eliminate all dangers. They still encountered the great fish in the Tigris River, still faced the threat of demonic opposition in Sarah's chamber. But it ensured that every challenge became an opportunity for growth, every obstacle a chance to experience divine provision. Consider the practical ways Raphael's protection manifested during their journey. When they camped by the Tigris River and the enormous fish threatened to devour Tobias, the angel's quick thinking transformed mortal danger into medical provision. "Catch the fish," he commanded, "and take out its heart, liver, and gall, and put them away safely." What appeared to be a life-threatening encounter became the source of the very remedies they would need for the healing and deliverance that lay ahead. This pattern of divine protection, turning threats into provisions, obstacles into opportunities, reflects the deeper principle by which Raphael guards all travelers on life's journey. The challenges we face are rarely removed entirely, but they are transformed into stepping stones toward our ultimate destination. The difficulties that seem designed to destroy us are often the very circumstances through which divine strength is revealed and character is forged. The quiet confidence that settles over travelers who invoke Raphael's protection is not born from the illusion that nothing bad will happen, but from the assurance that whatever happens will ultimately serve a good purpose. This is the peace that passes understanding, not the absence of danger, but the presence of one who is greater than any danger, who walks beside us through every valley of shadow and leads us beside still waters, even in the midst of wilderness wandering. Ancient travelers developed elaborate rituals of protection, amulets and charms, prayers and offerings, careful attention to omens and signs. But those who understood Raphael's ministry knew that true protection came not from external talismans, but from internal trust, not from magical formulas, but from relationship with the divine guide who never sleeps, never grows weary, and never abandons his charges to face dangers alone. The sensory experiences of traveling under divine protection carry their own distinctive characteristics. There's the sense of an invisible companion walking just behind or alongside, never intrusive, but always present. There's the way certain paths seem to beckon while others feel inexplicably wrong, as if an inner compass is being adjusted by celestial navigation. There's the uncanny timing by which needed provisions appear just when hope is fading, or dangerous situations resolve themselves through seemingly coincidental interventions. Modern travelers still experience these mysterious protections, though they may interpret them through different frameworks. The business traveler whose flight is delayed just long enough to avoid a storm, the family whose wrong turn leads them away from an accident, the solo adventurer who finds help in unexpected places. All these experiences echo the ancient promise that divine protection is still available to those who seek it with sincere hearts. But Raphael's guardianship extends beyond physical journeys to encompass the metaphorical travels that define human experience. Every major life transition, leaving home for college, starting a new career, entering marriage, becoming a parent, facing retirement, carries the same mixture of excitement and uncertainty that Tobias felt as he set out from Nineveh. And for each of these passages, the same divine protection is available to those who humble themselves to ask for guidance. The teenage years are perhaps the most obvious parallel to Tobias's journey, that time when young people must leave the security of childhood and venture into the adult world with all its complexities and dangers. Like Tobias, they often find themselves facing challenges they never imagined, making decisions that will shape their entire future, learning to distinguish between trustworthy guides and deceptive influences. Career changes, geographic relocations, relationship transitions. All these common human experiences involve the same need for divine guidance that Tobias experienced on his journey to Media. The angel who guided him through unfamiliar territories and protected him from hidden dangers is the same celestial being who offers guidance to modern travelers navigating the complex landscape of contemporary life. The protection Raphael offers is not passive but interactive, requiring the cooperation and obedience of those he guides. When he told Tobias to catch the fish, the young man had to overcome his fear and act on the angel's instruction. When he guided him to Sarah's house, Tobias had to trust that this apparent detour served a greater purpose. The protection was real and powerful, but it required faith-filled response from the one being protected. This principle remains constant in contemporary experience. Divine protection is available, but it often requires us to act on inner promptings that may not make logical sense, to choose paths that seem longer or more difficult, but ultimately prove safe, to trust divine timing even when it conflicts with our preferred schedule. The peace that comes from knowing we're under divine protection doesn't eliminate the need for wisdom, courage, and responsible action. Rather, it provides the foundation that makes such virtues possible. The ultimate destination of every journey undertaken under Raphael's protection is not just physical arrival at a geographical location, but spiritual arrival at a deeper understanding of divine love and provision. Those who travel with this celestial guide often return home changed not just by what they've seen or accomplished, but by what they've experienced of heaven's faithfulness along the way. In the tender story of Tobias and Sarah's courtship, we witness one of the most beautiful expressions of Raphael's ministry, his role as heaven's matchmaker, the divine presence who orchestrates encounters between souls destined for sacred union. Their love story unfolds, not with the casual meeting and dating patterns familiar to modern relationships, but with the reverent deliberation of those who understood marriage as a holy covenant blessed by heaven itself. Picture young Tobias as he first catches sight of Sarah, daughter of Raguel, in the courtyard of her family's home in Ecbatana. The attraction is immediate and powerful, but it's tempered by something deeper than mere physical appeal, a recognition that seems to echo from the very depths of his soul, as if he were remembering someone he had somehow always known. This is the mysterious resonance that occurs when two spirits recognize their divine complement, when human love becomes a reflection of the divine love that created them both. But their path to union is shadowed by Sarah's terrible history. 7 previous husbands killed by the demon Asmodeus on their wedding nights. The young woman who should be radiating the joy of approaching marriage instead carries the weight of being considered cursed, dangerous, untouchable. Her beauty has become a burden, her desire for love, a source of shame, her very presence, a reminder of mortality's fragility in the face of supernatural malevolence. Raphael's guidance in this delicate situation reveals his profound understanding of human psychology and divine purpose. He doesn't dismiss the reality of the demonic opposition they face, but neither does he allow fear to prevent the union that heaven has ordained. Instead, he provides both practical instruction and spiritual weapons for overcoming the forces that have destroyed previous attempts at happiness. The wedding preparations take on an almost sacramental quality under Raphael's oversight. Every detail, from the timing of the ceremony to the prayers offered in the bridal chamber, serves both practical and spiritual purposes. The incense burned from the fish's heart and liver isn't merely following the angel's medical advice, but participating in a ritual of purification and protection that transforms their private chamber into a sanctuary where divine love can flourish without demonic interference. Consider the profound trust required of both young people in this moment. Tobias must overcome not only normal wedding night nervousness, but the very real knowledge that 7 men before him have died in this exact situation. His courage comes not from youthful bravado, but from faith in the divine guide who has brought him safely through every previous challenge. Sarah must open her heart once again to hope after 7 devastating losses, trusting that this time will be different, because this time divine love is actively involved in blessing their union. The prayers they offer together in their bridal chamber reveal the spiritual foundation Raphael has helped them build. Blessed are you, O God of our ancestors, Tobias prays, and blessed is your name in all generations forever. Let the heavens and the whole creation bless you forever. You made Adam, and for him you made his wife Eve as a helper and support. From the two of them the human race has sprung. You said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helper for him like himself." These aren't the words of young people overcome by passion, but of souls who understand their love as participation in the creative love of God himself. Their physical union will be blessed because it's grounded in spiritual unity. Their marriage will endure because it's built on the foundation of divine purpose rather than mere human emotion. The defeat of Asmodeus, through their faithful prayers and the angel's protection, demonstrates how divine love conquers all forms of opposition. The demon who had seemed so powerful, who had struck terror into the hearts of an entire community, flees to the remotest parts of Egypt when confronted with genuine love blessed by heaven. This isn't merely symbolic victory, but a practical demonstration that authentic love, properly blessed and protected, cannot be destroyed by evil forces. The sensory details of their wedding celebration carry deeper significance than mere festive description. The sound of music and laughter echoing through Raguel's house represents the joy of heaven itself, celebrating this victory of love over fear, life over death, hope over despair. The fragrance of wedding flowers mingles with the lingering scent of protective incense, creating an atmosphere where natural joy and supernatural blessing merge seamlessly. Raphael's blessing extends beyond the wedding day to encompass the daily grace needed for lasting marriage. The angel who guided them to each other continues to influence their relationship, helping them navigate the inevitable challenges that all couples face. His presence teaches them that married love isn't a destination but a journey, not a feeling but a commitment, not an achievement but a gift that must be carefully tended and regularly renewed. The modern relevance of this ancient courtship story speaks to hearts across cultures and centuries. In an age when relationships often lack spiritual foundation, when marriages frequently crumble under the weight of unmet expectations, and when love is often confused with mere attraction, Tobias and Sarah's story offers a different model, one where divine blessing transforms human love into something that can withstand any opposition. Their example shows how couples can invite Raphael's blessing into their own relationships, not through elaborate rituals or ancient ceremonies, but through the simple recognition that love at its best is always a participation in divine love. Their willingness to pray together, face challenges together, and trust divine guidance together created the foundation for a marriage that would bless not only themselves, but future generations. The ripple effects of their blessed union extend far beyond their personal happiness. Their children and grandchildren would grow up in a home where divine love was not just believed, but experienced, where the reality of angelic protection was not just taught, but lived. Their marriage became a lighthouse of hope for other couples facing difficulties, a testimony that true love blessed by heaven can overcome any obstacle. The gentle romance of their courtship, conducted under heaven's watchful eye and guided by divine wisdom, reminds us that the deepest human relationships are never merely human affairs, but sacred partnerships where two souls join in serving purposes greater than themselves. Their love story continues to inspire couples seeking relationships built on spiritual foundations, unions that reflect divine love rather than merely expressing human desire. The warmth of Raphael's healing touch extends naturally from individual restoration to the sacred bonds that weave families together. For the Archangel understands that no person exists in isolation, and true healing must address the relationships that either nurture our growth or hinder our flourishing. In the gentle rhythm of family life, parents blessing children at bedtime, siblings sharing whispered secrets in moonlit chambers, grandparents gathering little ones close to share stories of days long past. Raphael's presence works quietly to strengthen the invisible threads that bind hearts together across generations. Picture the ancient Hebrew household in the evening hours, when the day's work is finished and oil lamps cast dancing shadows on mud brick walls. Here, around the simple wooden table where bread is broken and wine is shared, Raphael moves unseen but not unfelt, his presence blessing the conversations that heal old wounds, the laughter that builds new memories, and the prayers that invite divine presence into ordinary moments. This is his ministry at its most intimate level, not the dramatic interventions that make headlines, but the quiet grace that makes homes into sanctuaries. Family relationships, precisely because they involve our deepest vulnerabilities and longest histories, often carry our most stubborn wounds. The sibling rivalry that began in childhood can calcify into lifelong resentment. The harsh words spoken in a moment of stress can echo through decades of interaction. The misunderstanding that should have been cleared up immediately, instead, becomes the foundation for years of growing distance. These are the wounds that Raphael addresses with infinite patience, working sometimes for generations to restore what was broken, to heal what was damaged, to rebuild what was torn down. Consider how family healing often requires addressing patterns that stretch back through multiple generations. The anger that erupts in a modern father may have its roots in wounds inflicted on his grandfather. The inability to express affection that characterizes one family line may stem from trauma experienced by ancestors who never had the opportunity to process their pain. Raphael's healing work in families often involves unraveling these complex knots of inherited dysfunction, bringing light into dark patterns, and establishing new legacies of health and wholeness. The process of family healing requires delicate orchestration, for unlike individual healing where one person can simply receive divine touch, family restoration must involve the cooperation of multiple people with different perspectives, different wounds, and different levels of willingness to change. Raphael works with the wisdom of one who sees the entire tapestry, understanding how each thread affects the whole, knowing when to work on individual hearts and when to bring people together for direct reconciliation. Sometimes his healing work manifests through orchestrated encounters, the chance meeting that allows estranged siblings to see each other with fresh eyes, the unexpected letter that arrives just when reconciliation seems impossible, the grandchild whose innocent question opens doorways for honest conversation between generations. Other times his influence appears through gradual changes of heart, the slow softening of resentment, the growing willingness to see another's perspective, the dawning recognition that forgiveness serves the forgiver more than the forgiven. The emotional landscape of family healing carries its own unique challenges and rewards. There's the peculiar pain that comes only from being wounded by those we love most deeply, the ache of disappointed expectations in relationships that were supposed to provide unconditional acceptance. But there's also the incomparable joy of reconciliation with those whose approval matters most, the profound peace that comes from knowing we belong somewhere, the deep satisfaction of contributing to a legacy of love rather than continuing a cycle of pain. Raphael's approach to family healing always begins with truth-telling, not the harsh, accusatory truth that destroys relationships, but the gentle truth that illuminates reality without judgment. Families often function on elaborate systems of denial, unspoken agreements to avoid certain topics, careful choreographies designed to prevent explosive encounters. The angel of healing brings light into these shadowy arrangements, helping family members see clearly without being overwhelmed by what they discover. This divine illumination often reveals that the family member we've cast as the villain in our personal story is actually carrying wounds that explain their difficult behavior. The overly critical parent may be desperately trying to protect their child from mistakes that cause them pain. The distant sibling may be struggling with feelings of inadequacy that make closeness feel dangerous. The demanding grandparent may be facing fears of mortality that manifest as attempts to control outcomes they cannot actually influence. The practical expression of Raphael's family ministry often works through enhanced communication, as if his presence helps family members find words for feelings they'd carried for years without expression. Conversations that have been avoided for decades suddenly become possible. Apologies that seemed impossible to speak flow naturally from lips that have been sealed by pride or fear. Affection that has been locked away by hurt finds new pathways for expression. Children are particularly responsive to Raphael's healing presence in families, perhaps because their hearts haven't yet developed the protective barriers that make adult healing more complex. A child's innocent question can pierce through years of adult pretense, creating moments of authentic encounter that mature hearts have been avoiding. Their natural capacity for forgiveness and their hunger for connection often serve as catalysts for broader family healing. The restoration of family bonds under Raphael's influence creates ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate family circle. Children who grow up in healed families carry different assumptions about relationships into their adult lives. They expect conflict to be resolvable, believe love can overcome hurt, and possess practical skills for navigating relational challenges. These children become the foundation for healthier marriages, more functional communities, and ultimately a more healed world. Modern families, with their complex structures of divorce and remarriage, blended households and geographic dispersion, present unique challenges that Raphael's ancient wisdom easily encompasses. His healing touch adapts to contemporary configurations while maintaining its essential nature of drawing hearts together in love. The single parent struggling to provide both maternal and paternal influence, the step-family trying to blend different traditions and loyalties, the military family dealing with long separations. All these modern variations on the theme of family life fall within Raphael's sphere of caring concern. The patience required for family healing often tests everyone involved, for these deep patterns of interaction don't change overnight. Unlike physical healing, which can sometimes happen in dramatic moments of divine intervention, family healing usually unfolds over months and years, requiring sustained commitment from all parties and continued faith in divine grace. But the results justify the patience, creating legacies of love that bless not only the immediate family, but generations yet unborn. As Christianity spread from its Jewish roots into the wider Gentile world, carrying with it the ancient Hebrew understanding of angelic ministry, Raphael's presence began to manifest in new cultural contexts, while maintaining his essential nature as divine healer and compassionate guide. The early church fathers, steeped in both scriptural tradition and their own encounters with divine intervention, recognized in Raphael a powerful advocate for human wholeness, whose ministry transcended the boundaries of any single culture or historical period. Picture the Byzantine churches of the 4th and 5th centuries, where skilled artisans labored for months, creating magnificent mosaics that would capture celestial beauty in colored stone and precious metals. In these sacred spaces, Raphael's image gazed down from golden backgrounds with eyes that seemed to follow the worshipper, hands positioned in gestures of blessing that promised healing to all who approached with faith. The deep blues and rich purples of his robes spoke of royal dignity, while the gentle expression on his face conveyed the accessible compassion that made him beloved among the faithful. The iconographic tradition that developed around Raphael's image carried profound theological meaning, encoded in visual symbols that illiterate believers could read as clearly as any written text. The fish he often carried referenced his role in Tobias's story, while simultaneously evoking Christ as the spiritual fish who feeds hungry souls. The pilgrim's staff in his hand identified him as the protector of travelers, while suggesting the spiritual journey that every believer must undertake. The small jar of healing ointment, frequently depicted at his side, promised relief for both physical ailments and spiritual wounds. Medieval monasteries became particularly devoted to Raphael's intercession, for the monastic understanding of spiritual warfare naturally resonated with the archangel's role in protecting Tobias and Sarah from demonic attack. Monks copying illuminated manuscripts often included elaborate marginalia, depicting Raphael's various biblical appearances, their careful attention to detail reflecting not merely artistic skill, but deep devotional commitment to the angel whose healing ministry they hoped to emulate in their own care for sick and troubled souls. The great Gothic cathedrals of the High Middle Ages gave Raphael prominent placement in their soaring windows, where coloured light streaming through depicted scenes of his biblical adventures transformed ordinary church services into experiences of transcendent beauty. Pilgrims travelling dangerous roads to reach these sacred sites naturally claimed Raphael's protection for their journeys, creating a spiritual economy where the very act of pilgrimage served as prayer for angelic guidance and divine healing. Folk traditions surrounding Raphael developed differently in various regions, adapting to local customs while maintaining core elements of his biblical ministry. In rural communities where formal medical care was scarce, Raphael's reputation as divine physician made him the natural patron of village healers, midwives, and anyone whose vocation involved caring for the sick and suffering. Prayer cards bearing his image became treasured possessions, passed down through generations, carried in pockets, and pressed between the pages of family Bibles. The Renaissance period brought new artistic interpretations of Raphael that reflected changing theological emphases and artistic techniques. Painters like Botticini and Pollaiuolo created works that emphasized the angel's youthful beauty and approachable humanity, making him seem less like a distant celestial being and more like an older brother who might actually walk alongside troubled souls on their earthly journeys. These artistic representations help democratize angelic devotion, making it accessible to ordinary believers rather than restricting it to theological specialists. The Protestant Reformation created complex attitudes toward angelic intercession, with some reformers rejecting popular devotions to angels, while others maintained that biblical angels like Raphael remained available to assist believers who approached them with proper understanding. This theological tension produced rich devotional literature that sought to distinguish between superstitious practices and legitimate biblical faith in angelic ministry. Catholic Counter-Reformation theology affirmed Raphael's continued ministry while providing clearer guidelines for appropriate devotional practices. The Council of Trent's pronouncements on angels helped establish boundaries that protected both popular piety and orthodox doctrine, ensuring that devotion to Raphael would enhance rather than replace direct relationship with Christ. Baroque churches of the 17th and 18th centuries created elaborate altarpieces dedicated to Raphael that combined theatrical drama with deep spiritual meaning. These artistic works often depicted pivotal moments from the Tobit narrative with such emotional intensity that viewers could almost feel themselves present at the scene, experiencing both the terror of demonic opposition and the relief of angelic deliverance. The Enlightenment period brought rational skepticism that challenged traditional angelic beliefs, but Raphael's ministry proved remarkably resilient, adapting to new intellectual frameworks while maintaining its essential character. Even skeptical intellectuals often found themselves drawn to the psychological insights embedded in stories of angelic guidance, recognizing in them profound truths about human nature and the healing power of hope. 19th century Romanticism rediscovered Raphael through literary works that emphasized the mysterious and wonderful aspects of angelic intervention. Writers like John Henry Newman and Gerard Manley Hopkins found in traditional angel lore rich material for exploring themes of divine presence in ordinary experience, helping bridge the gap between ancient faith and modern sensibility. The 20th century's two world wars created desperate need for belief in protective spiritual forces, and Raphael's reputation as guardian of travelers found renewed relevance among soldiers facing combat and families praying for their safe return. Military chaplains often found themselves explaining traditional angel lore to young men and women who had never encountered such beliefs, but desperately needed whatever hope they could find. Modern Catholic teaching, as expressed in documents like the Catechism of the Catholic Church, maintains careful balance regarding angelic ministry, affirming biblical teaching about angels while warning against superstitious practices. This official position allows for continued devotion to Raphael, while providing theological framework that prevents excess or error. Contemporary Protestant attitudes toward Raphael vary widely, from evangelical traditions that emphasize his biblical role while avoiding devotional practices, to liturgical churches that maintain traditional prayers and feast days. This diversity reflects the complex task of translating ancient spiritual practices into modern theological frameworks. Orthodox Christianity has maintained perhaps the most consistent tradition of Raphael devotion, with iconographic practices and liturgical celebrations that directly connect contemporary believers with the unbroken chain of Christian tradition stretching back to the early church. Orthodox icons of Raphael continue to be painted according to traditional specifications that preserve theological meaning in visual form. The global expansion of Christianity in the 20th and 21st centuries has brought Raphael's ministry into contact with new cultures and spiritual traditions, creating fascinating syntheses that maintain biblical foundations while adapting to local customs and needs. African, Asian, and Latin American Christians have developed their own traditions of angelic devotion that reflect both universal human needs and particular cultural expressions. Modern medical missions often invoke Raphael's patronage, seeing in his healing ministry a model for contemporary efforts to bring healthcare to underserved populations. Medical professionals working in dangerous or challenging environments frequently report experiences that they interpret as angelic protection or guidance, continuing the ancient tradition of recognizing divine assistance in healing work. The internet age has created new opportunities for sharing Raphael devotions and testimonies. with online communities forming around shared experiences of angelic intervention. These digital networks allow believers from different traditions and cultures to compare their experiences and deepen their understanding of angelic ministry in contemporary life. Throughout the centuries of Christian artistic tradition, Raphael's visual representation has evolved into a rich symbolic language that speaks directly to the human heart's deepest longings for healing, protection, and divine companionship. The traditional iconography associated with this beloved archangel carries layers of meaning that extend far beyond mere decorative elements, creating visual theology that communicates profound spiritual truths through carefully chosen symbols and artistic techniques. The pilgrim's staff that appears in countless depictions of Raphael serves as more than identification of his role as protector of travelers. It represents the support that divine guidance provides for every soul's spiritual journey through life's uncertain terrain. Medieval artists carved these staffs with intricate detail, often incorporating vine motifs that referenced Christ's teaching about being the true vine, or flowering branches that symbolize the new life that springs from spiritual pilgrimage undertaken under divine protection. The fish that Raphael carries in many artistic representations draws its significance from the Tobit narrative while simultaneously evoking multiple layers of Christian symbolism. In the story's immediate context, it represents the divine provision that transforms apparent danger into healing resource. But Christian artists understood the fish as an ancient symbol for Christ himself, making Raphael's fish a visual proclamation that true healing comes ultimately through the divine physician who conquered death itself. The small jar or flask of healing ointment, frequently depicted in Raphael's hands, speaks to his ministry as divine physician while referencing the holy oils used in Christian sacramental practice. Medieval viewers would immediately recognize the connection between the angel's healing touch and the church's ministry of anointing the sick, understanding that both drew from the same source of divine power and compassion. The colors chosen for Raphael's robes carry their own theological significance, carefully selected to communicate spiritual truths through visual means. The deep blues often used for his outer garments evoke both the heavenly realm from which he comes and the peaceful depths of divine wisdom. Green, when it appears in his clothing, represents both the healing power of nature and the hope of renewal that his ministry brings to wounded souls. Gold accents speak of divine glory and the precious value of every soul he touches with healing grace. The wings depicted in artistic representations of Raphael vary dramatically across different periods and cultures, but they consistently communicate his nature as messenger between heavenly and earthly realms. Byzantine mosaics often portrayed his wings with jewel-like precision, each feather outlined in gold to suggest the indescribable beauty of celestial beings. Renaissance paintings frequently used softer, more naturalistic wing depictions that emphasized his approachable humanity while maintaining his divine nature. The gentle expression cultivated in artistic depictions of Raphael's face represents centuries of theological reflection on the nature of divine love. Artists strove to capture in paint or stone the perfect balance between divine authority and accessible compassion, creating countenances that invited approach while commanding reverence. The eyes, in particular, were crafted to convey both the penetrating sight that sees all human need and the infinite kindness that responds to every cry for help. Gothic cathedral workshops developed elaborate programs of stained glass windows that told Raphael's story through sequential panels, creating visual narratives that served as Bible lessons for illiterate congregations. These windows often portrayed key moments from the Tobit story with remarkable attention to psychological detail, showing not just external actions, but internal emotional states that helped viewers connect personally with the ancient narrative. The workshop traditions that produced these sacred images operated under spiritual discipline that regarded artistic creation as a form of prayer and worship. Master craftsmen passed down not only technical skills, but theological understanding, ensuring that every symbol carried proper meaning and every composition served authentic spiritual purpose. The creation of Raphael imagery was never merely aesthetic exercise, but sacred work undertaken in communion with the divine reality being depicted. Folk art traditions developed their own symbolic vocabulary for representing Raphael, often incorporating local elements that made his ministry relevant to particular communities and cultures. Rural communities might depict him with healing herbs native to their region, while coastal populations showed him blessing fishing nets or calming storms at sea. These local adaptations demonstrated the universal relevance of his ministry while honoring specific cultural contexts. The Renaissance brought new artistic techniques that allowed for more psychologically complex depictions of Raphael, showing him not just as symbol, but as personality capable of full range of appropriate emotions. Painters like Raphael Sanzio, who took the archangel's name, created works that emphasized both divine dignity and human accessibility, making the angel seem like someone who might actually understand and respond to contemporary struggles. Baroque artistic traditions created dramatic representations of Raphael that emphasized the supernatural power of his interventions while maintaining his essential gentleness. These works often showed him in dynamic action binding demons, healing the sick, guiding travelers through storms, but always with expressions of serene confidence that suggested divine love's ultimate victory over all forms of opposition. Modern artistic interpretations of Raphael face the challenge of communicating traditional spiritual truths through contemporary visual languages that often seem skeptical of supernatural claims. Some artists have responded by emphasizing the psychological aspects of healing and guidance, creating works that speak to universal human experiences while maintaining connection to traditional symbolism. Contemporary religious art featuring Raphael often incorporates medical imagery that connects his ancient healing ministry with modern healthcare practices. Hospitals and medical schools sometimes commission works that show him blessing contemporary healing arts, suggesting continuity between ancient divine intervention and current scientific advancement. The global spread of Christianity has produced fascinating cultural syntheses in Raphael imagery, with artists from different traditions bringing their own aesthetic sensibilities to traditional symbols. African interpretations might emphasize community healing aspects, while Asian representations often incorporate meditation and contemplative elements that resonate with local spiritual practices. Digital media has created new possibilities for Raphael imagery, with online galleries allowing believers worldwide to share and appreciate different cultural interpretations of traditional symbols. These technological developments continue the ancient tradition of using visual means to communicate spiritual realities, adapting eternal truths to contemporary forms of expression. The rich tradition of prayers and devotional practices, centered around Raphael, creates pathways for intimate communion with this beloved archangel, offering believers time-tested methods for seeking his intercession and experiencing his healing presence. These sacred formulations, polished by centuries of faithful repetition and sanctified by countless answered prayers, provide structure for human hearts seeking divine encounter, while allowing space for personal expression of individual needs and circumstances. The most ancient prayers to Raphael draw their language directly from biblical sources, particularly the prayer that Tobias offers in the bridal chamber. "Blessed are you, O God of our ancestors, and blessed is your name in all generations forever." This foundational prayer establishes the proper theological framework for angelic devotion, beginning with worship of God himself before seeking angelic intercession, acknowledging that all angelic power derives from divine authority, and maintaining proper perspective on the relationship between creator and creature. Traditional morning prayers, invoking Raphael's protection, often begin before dawn, when the soul is naturally more receptive to spiritual influence, and the day's distractions have not yet clouded the mind's clarity. Saint Raphael, glorious archangel, great prince of the heavenly court, you are illustrious for your gifts of wisdom and grace. You are a guide of those who journey by land or sea or air, consoler of the afflicted, and refuge of sinners. These opening words establish relationship while acknowledging the full scope of his ministry. The rhythmic cadences of traditional prayers create meditative states that quiet anxious thoughts and focus scattered attention on divine realities. The repetitive elements serve not as meaningless recitation, but as spiritual discipline that gradually aligns human consciousness with heavenly frequencies. Assist me in all my needs and in all the sufferings of this life, as once you helped the young Tobias on his travels. Because you are the medicine of God, I humbly pray you to heal the many infirmities of my soul and the ills that afflict my body. Evening prayers to Raphael often emphasize gratitude for protection received during the day's activities, creating awareness of divine care that might otherwise go unnoticed. I give you thanks, blessed Raphael, for all the benefits you have obtained for me from the Almighty. Continue to protect me and all who are dear to me. This practice of evening thanksgiving cultivates spiritual sensitivity that recognizes angelic intervention in circumstances that might appear merely coincidental to less attentive observation. Prayers for healing through Raphael's intercession require particular attention to proper spiritual attitude, balancing earnest petition with humble submission to divine will. O God, who to help us resist the snares of the enemy, gave us the Archangel Raphael as companion of Saint Tobias on his journey. Grant that we may always be protected by his guardianship and strengthened by his help. This prayer acknowledges that healing sometimes involves protection from spiritual as well as physical harm. The practice of novenas, 9 consecutive days of prayer, creates sustained spiritual focus that allows deeper penetration of divine grace into human consciousness. Raphael novenas typically emphasize different aspects of his ministry on different days: healing on the first day, protection during travel on the second, guidance in relationships on the third, and so forth. This systematic approach ensures comprehensive coverage of human needs while building spiritual momentum through sustained devotion. Personal prayers to Raphael often depart from formal structures to express individual concerns in spontaneous language that flows directly from the heart. Raphael, I'm scared about tomorrow's medical appointment. Help me trust that whatever happens, God's love surrounds me. These informal conversations acknowledge the angel's accessibility while maintaining reverent attitude toward his divine authority and compassionate nature. Family prayers invoking Raphael's blessing create household traditions that pass spiritual heritage from generation to generation. Parents teaching children to pray for angelic protection. Plant seeds of faith that often bear fruit in times of crisis decades later. Angel Raphael, watch over our family. Keep us safe when we're apart and help us love each other better when we're together. Such simple prayers create family culture where divine assistance is expected and recognized. Prayers for travelers have particular poignancy in contemporary culture, where families often live scattered across great distances and dangerous journeys are undertaken daily for both necessity and pleasure. Glorious Archangel St. Raphael, great Prince of the heavenly court, you are illustrious for your gifts of wisdom and grace. You are a guide of those who journey by land or sea or air. These traditional words carry special meaning for parents watching children leave home or spouses separating for business travel. Medical professionals sometimes develop their own prayers to Raphael, seeking his guidance in diagnostic decisions and healing interventions. Saint Raphael, divine physician, guide my hands and mind as I care for the sick. Help me see what needs to be seen and do what needs to be done. These professional prayers acknowledge the collaboration between human skill and divine grace that characterizes healing at its best. Community prayers invoking Raphael's intercession often focus on collective needs that affect entire populations: epidemic diseases, natural disasters, social conflicts that tear communities apart. Archangel Raphael, healer of nations, bring your healing touch to our community. Bind the forces that divide us and heal the wounds that separate us. Such prayers recognize that individual healing is connected to communal wholeness. The use of prayer beads or rosaries, designed specifically for Raphael devotions, provides tactile dimension that helps maintain concentration during extended prayer periods. The physical act of moving from bead to bead creates rhythm that supports meditation while marking progress through predetermined prayer sequences. Different beads might be designated for different types of petitions: healing, protection, guidance, creating structured approach to comprehensive prayer. Intercessory prayers, asking Raphael to help others demonstrate the communal nature of angelic ministry and reflect the biblical understanding that divine blessings are meant to be shared rather than hoarded. Saint Raphael, I entrust to your care all those who suffer from illness, all who travel in dangerous places, all who seek healing for broken relationships. These prayers expand individual devotion into ministry that embraces broader human needs. Contemporary prayer books often include updated language that makes traditional devotions accessible to modern believers while maintaining theological accuracy and spiritual authenticity. Raphael, you walked with Tobias as his trusted guide. Walk with me too, especially when I feel lost or afraid. Help me recognize your presence in the people and circumstances that surround me. Such adaptations honor tradition while speaking in contemporary idiom. The practice of combining Raphael prayers with specific actions. Visiting the sick, volunteering at medical facilities, contributing to healing ministries, creates practical spirituality that embodies prayer through service. This integration of devotion and action reflects the holistic nature of authentic faith and provides tangible ways to cooperate with angelic ministry in addressing human needs. In our contemporary world of advanced medical technology and scientific understanding, reports of encounters with Raphael continue to emerge from unexpected quarters, suggesting that this ancient healing ministry adapts seamlessly to modern circumstances while maintaining its essential character of divine compassion reaching into human need. These contemporary testimonies often come from the most unlikely sources: skeptical healthcare professionals, secular travelers, individuals with no particular religious background, yet they carry the unmistakable characteristics of angelic intervention described in biblical narratives. Consider the emergency room physician who describes the night shift when everything seemed to go wrong simultaneously. Multiple trauma cases arriving within minutes of each other, critical equipment malfunctioning, staff members calling in sick at the worst possible moment. "I felt completely overwhelmed," she recalls, and then this sense of calm presence settled over the entire department. Suddenly, everyone seemed to know exactly what to do. Equipment that had been malfunctioning began working perfectly. The most critically injured patients stabilized against all medical odds. It was as if someone invisible was coordinating everything, guiding our hands, clearing our minds. The airline pilot tells of flying through severe turbulence over the Pacific Ocean with weather systems that appeared suddenly on radar screens and seemed to defy meteorological explanation. "I've been flying for 25 years and I've never experienced anything like it," he explains. "The plane was being tossed around like a toy. Passengers were terrified, and then, I can't explain this rationally, I felt this presence in the cockpit with me. Not visually, but unmistakably real. My hands on the controls became steady, my mind cleared, and I found myself navigating through gaps in the storm system that shouldn't have been there. We landed safely in conditions that should have been impossible." Modern medical missions operating in dangerous or remote locations frequently report experiences that echo the biblical narratives of divine protection and miraculous provision. The surgical team working in a conflict zone describes running out of critical supplies just before a mass casualty event, only to discover a misplaced shipment containing exactly what they needed, appearing in their storage facility. "There was no record of that shipment in any of our logistics systems," the mission director notes. "It wasn't supposed to be there, but it contained precisely the medical supplies we needed to save lives that day." The phenomena of near-miss accidents, where disaster is averted by seemingly impossible circumstances, continue to puzzle investigators while providing comfort to those who interpret them through the lens of angelic protection. The family whose vacation route was delayed by a minor car breakdown, causing them to miss being on a highway when a bridge collapsed. The construction worker who felt an inexplicable urge to check equipment that appeared perfectly functional, discovering a hidden flaw that could have caused fatal accidents. The mother who suddenly felt compelled to take a different route home from work, later learning that her usual path was blocked by a multi-car accident that occurred at exactly the time she would have been there. Contemporary healing testimonies often involve combinations of medical intervention and unexplained factors that medical professionals acknowledge but cannot scientifically explain. The cancer patient, whose tumors disappeared between diagnostic scans, with no medical treatment that could account for the remission. The accident victim whose spinal injuries healed far beyond what neurological specialists considered possible. The premature infant whose survival and normal development defied every medical prediction. While healthcare providers are careful not to claim miraculous intervention, many privately acknowledge that some recoveries exceed the boundaries of medical explanation. Mental health professionals working with trauma survivors sometimes report therapeutic breakthroughs that seem to involve more than human counseling techniques. The therapist describes sessions where clients experience profound emotional healing that appears to come from beyond the therapeutic relationship itself. "I've been trained in evidence-based practices, and I use them," one psychologist explains. "But sometimes there's an additional presence in the room that facilitates healing in ways I can't take credit for." Clients emerge from these sessions with peace and understanding that feels like it came from a source greater than our therapeutic work together. The modern pilgrimage movement, whether religious or secular in nature, continues to generate reports of protective intervention and guidance that pilgrims attribute to angelic assistance. Walkers on the Camino de Santiago describe mysterious fellow travelers who appear at crucial moments to offer help or direction, then disappear without explanation. Hikers attempting challenging mountain routes tell of finding their way through dangerous conditions with inexplicable clarity about proper routes and timing. Technology workers in high-stress environments sometimes report experiences of sudden clarity and problem-solving ability that feels like external assistance. The software engineer facing an impossible deadline describes hours of coding where solutions flowed effortlessly, as if someone else was guiding his thinking. The network administrator, dealing with system failures affecting thousands of users, suddenly finds himself implementing fixes he hadn't consciously developed, restoring service through methods that surprised even his own technical understanding. Marriage counselors and family therapists occasionally witness relationship healing that exceeds what their professional training would predict. Couples who seemed beyond reconciliation suddenly find pathways to understanding and forgiveness. Families torn apart by years of conflict experience breakthroughs that allow genuine healing and restored connection. Sometimes, my office feels like sacred space, one counselor observes, as if there's a presence here that wants these families to succeed more than I do. The global nature of contemporary communication allows sharing of these experiences across cultural and geographical boundaries, creating awareness that similar phenomena occur worldwide, regardless of local religious traditions or cultural contexts. Social media platforms and online forums dedicated to spiritual experiences collect thousands of testimonies that share common characteristics: sudden peace in crisis situations, unexpected provision of needed resources, protective interventions that prevent disasters, healing that exceeds medical expectations. Young adults, particularly those facing major life transitions, often report guidance experiences that help them navigate complex decisions about career, relationships, and life direction. The college student who felt inexplicably drawn to change her major, leading to opportunities she never could have imagined. The young professional who decided against a lucrative job offer based on inner prompting, later discovering that the company faced serious ethical and legal problems. The individual contemplating marriage who experienced clear inner warning about incompatibility that wasn't obvious to rational analysis. Healthcare chaplains working in hospitals and medical facilities often serve as bridges between medical and spiritual perspectives on healing, helping patients and families integrate experiences that seem to involve both human and divine intervention. People want to make sense of what they've experienced, one chaplain explains. They're grateful for medical care, but they also know something else was involved in their healing. My role is helping them understand how both can be true simultaneously. The adaptation of ancient angelic ministry to contemporary circumstances demonstrates remarkable flexibility, while maintaining essential characteristics. Whether appearing in emergency rooms or airplane cockpits, therapy offices or family homes, the presence described in modern testimonies carries the same qualities of gentle strength, practical wisdom, and healing compassion that characterized Raphael's biblical ministry. The methods may adapt to contemporary contexts, working through medical technology, transportation systems, communication networks. But the fundamental nature of divine love, reaching into human need, remains constant across the centuries. These contemporary encounters remind us that the realm of spirit continues to intersect with physical reality in ways that transcend human understanding, offering hope to those who face challenges that seem beyond human resources to resolve. The healing ministry of Raphael operates through principles that modern psychology is only beginning to understand, working with the intricate connections between mind, body, and spirit in ways that address not merely symptoms, but the deeper patterns that create and sustain human suffering. This divine physician approaches each case with perfect understanding of how emotional wounds create physical symptoms, how spiritual conflicts manifest as relational difficulties, and how the healing of one dimension naturally influences restoration in all other aspects of human experience. Consider how Raphael's healing begins with the establishment of relationship and trust, recognizing that authentic healing requires the cooperation of the one being healed rather than passive reception of external intervention. When he walked with Tobias, the angel didn't simply announce his divine nature and demand obedience, but patiently earned trust through demonstrated reliability, practical wisdom, and genuine care for the young man's welfare. This relational foundation created the psychological safety necessary for Tobias to follow guidance that sometimes seems strange or frightening. The gradual nature of most divine healing reflects sophisticated understanding of human psychology and the time required for deep change to take root and flourish. Instant healing, while certainly within divine power, often fails to address the underlying patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior that contributed to the original problem. Raphael's healing unfolds at the pace that allows for genuine transformation rather than mere temporary relief, working through the natural processes of human growth and development while infusing them with supernatural grace. The integration of natural and supernatural elements in Raphael's healing methods demonstrates divine respect for the created order while transcending its limitations when necessary. The fishbowl that restored Tobit's sight worked through properties that existed within creation itself, but its application was guided by divine wisdom that knew exactly how to use natural resources for supernatural purposes. This principle continues in contemporary healing, where medical treatment often becomes the vessel through which divine healing flows, neither replacing divine intervention nor being replaced by it. Emotional healing through Raphael's ministry typically involves the restoration of hope, which modern psychology recognizes as perhaps the most crucial factor in recovery from any form of trauma or loss. The angel's presence doesn't eliminate difficult circumstances, but transforms the experience's relationship to those circumstances, providing perspective that allows for growth rather than devastation, meaning rather than meaninglessness, purpose rather than despair. The role of forgiveness in Raphael's healing work addresses one of psychology's most persistent challenges: how to help people release resentment and anger that poison their emotional and physical well-being. Divine healing creates the inner strength necessary for genuine forgiveness, not as denial of legitimate hurt, but as liberation from the ongoing damage that unforgiveness creates. This process often requires addressing the deep wounds that make forgiveness feel impossible, healing the heart before asking it to extend grace to others. Raphael's healing frequently involves the restoration of proper boundaries, psychological, emotional, and spiritual limits that protect individual well-being while allowing for healthy connection with others. Many forms of human suffering stem from boundary violations or the inability to establish appropriate limits, creating cycles of abuse, codependency, and exploitation. Divine healing helps people develop the internal strength necessary to maintain healthy boundaries while remaining open to love and connection. The family systems dimension of Raphael's healing recognizes that individual problems often reflect broader patterns of dysfunction that must be addressed at the community level. When he heals one person, the ripple effects naturally extend to their relationships, often catalyzing healing in others who witness or benefit from the transformation. This systemic approach to healing acknowledges that humans exist within webs of relationship that either support or undermine individual well-being. The patience required for deep healing challenges contemporary expectations of instant results, but reflects divine understanding that superficial fixes often create more problems than they solve. Raphael's healing works through the natural rhythms of human development, honoring the time required for new patterns of thought and behavior to become established. This divine patience provides model for human helpers who want to support the healing process without forcing outcomes that cannot be sustained. The mystery of why some people experience dramatic healing while others face continued struggle reflects the complex interplay of factors that influence human experience. Personal choices, family history, cultural context, spiritual readiness, and divine purposes that exceed human understanding. Raphael's ministry encompasses both miraculous intervention and sustained support through ongoing difficulties, recognizing that healing takes many forms and serves many purposes in the divine economy. The prevention aspect of Raphael's healing work involves strengthening people's natural resilience and coping abilities before crisis occurs. This protective dimension helps individuals develop the spiritual, emotional, and psychological resources necessary to navigate life's inevitable challenges without being overwhelmed or permanently damaged. Such preventive healing often appears as wisdom, discernment, or inner strength that enables people to make choices that protect their well-being. The connection between physical and spiritual healing in Raphael's ministry reflects understanding that humans are integrated beings whose various dimensions influence each other in complex ways. Physical symptoms often carry emotional or spiritual meaning, while emotional wounds frequently manifest as physical illness. Effective healing addresses the whole person rather than treating isolated symptoms, recognizing that lasting restoration requires attention to all aspects of human experience. The role of community in Raphael's healing work acknowledges that healing rarely occurs in isolation, but requires supportive relationships that provide encouragement, accountability, and practical assistance during the restoration process. The angel often works through human instruments, healthcare providers, counselors, friends, family members, who become channels for divine grace while maintaining their fully human identity and agency. The transformative dimension of Raphael's healing extends beyond restoration to previous conditions, often resulting in greater strength, wisdom, and compassion than existed before the crisis occurred. This redemptive aspect of suffering allows painful experiences to become sources of blessing for both the healed individual and others who benefit from their increased capacity for understanding and service. Modern therapeutic practices increasingly recognize elements that mirror Raphael's healing methods: the importance of therapeutic relationship, the integration of mind-body approaches, the role of meaning-making in recovery, the value of community support, and the necessity of addressing underlying patterns rather than merely managing symptoms. While secular psychology cannot claim divine intervention, it can acknowledge the effectiveness of approaches that mirror angelic healing methods, creating space for collaboration between human and divine resources in addressing the full spectrum of human need. As we contemplate Raphael's continuing ministry throughout human history, our vision naturally expands toward the ultimate horizon where his healing work will reach its perfect completion, that promised future when every tear will be wiped away, every wound will be healed, and the entire created order will be restored to its original wholeness. This eschatological dimension of his mission provides both comfort for present struggles and motivation for participating in the divine work of restoration that continues to unfold throughout human history. Imagine, if you can, a world where Raphael's healing ministry has achieved its ultimate purpose. Communities where conflict has been transformed into collaboration. Families where love flows freely without the barriers created by hurt and misunderstanding. Individuals whose bodies, minds, and spirits function in perfect harmony with their divine design. This is not mere wishful thinking, but the assured destination toward which all of creation moves. The final chapter of the story that began in Eden and will conclude in the New Jerusalem. The progressive nature of divine restoration means that every act of healing we witness today, every moment of protection we experience, every instance of guidance we receive, serves as both present blessing and prophetic preview of the complete restoration that awaits. When Raphael touches a blind man's eyes and sight returns, we glimpse the day when all spiritual blindness will be removed and humanity will see God face to face. When he protects travelers from danger, we anticipate the time when all journeying will be safe because love will have conquered every form of hostility. Contemporary global challenges, epidemic diseases that sweep across continents, conflicts that tear nations apart, environmental destruction that threatens the planet's life support systems, can seem overwhelming when viewed from purely human perspective. But understanding Raphael's eternal mission provides different lens through which to view these massive problems. His healing ministry operates on every scale, from individual hearts to entire civilizations, working through countless human agents while maintaining divine perspective on ultimate outcomes. The acceleration of communication and transportation in our modern era creates unprecedented opportunities for Raphael's healing ministry to reach across traditional boundaries of culture, language, and geography. A healing that occurs in one part of the world can now inspire hope and faith on the opposite side of the planet within hours. Medical knowledge discovered in one location can be shared instantly with healthcare providers everywhere. Stories of divine intervention can encourage believers in every nation, creating global community of those who participate in and witness the ongoing work of restoration. Consider how contemporary healthcare missions exemplify Raphael's eternal mission in practical form. Medical professionals who sacrifice comfort and security to bring healing to the most vulnerable populations. Researchers who dedicate their lives to finding cures for diseases that primarily affect the poor. Organizations that provide medical care without regard for patients' ability to pay. These human initiatives become vehicles through which angelic healing continues to reach those who need it most desperately. The integration of ancient wisdom with modern technology creates new possibilities for healing that honor both divine intervention and human ingenuity. Medical devices that restore sight to the blind fulfill the same ultimate purpose as Raphael's healing of Tobit's eyes, using different methods but serving the identical divine intention of eliminating human suffering. Communication technologies that help families stay connected across vast distances serve the same function as the angel's protection of travelers, using contemporary means to address eternal human needs. The environmental restoration movement reflects participation in Raphael's cosmic healing mission, recognizing that human well-being is intimately connected to the health of the entire created order. When individuals and communities work to heal damaged ecosystems, reduce pollution, and protect endangered species, they join the angelic ministry of restoration that encompasses not just human needs but the wholeness of all creation. Educational initiatives that address the root causes of poverty, violence, and social dysfunction participate in Raphael's preventive healing work, strengthening communities' capacity to address problems before they become crises. Programs that teach conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, and spiritual development create resilience that reduces the need for crisis intervention while building foundations for flourishing human communities. The growing understanding of trauma and its generational effects creates opportunities for healing that extend across time, addressing wounds that have been passed down through families and cultures for decades or centuries. When therapists help individuals process ancestral trauma, when communities engage in truth and reconciliation processes, when nations acknowledge historical injustices and make amends, they participate in the comprehensive healing work that characterizes Raphael's eternal mission. Interfaith cooperation in addressing global challenges reflects the universal scope of divine healing ministry, bringing together people from different religious traditions who share common commitment to reducing suffering and promoting human flourishing. Natural disasters, epidemic diseases, and humanitarian crises create opportunities for collaboration that transcends theological differences while serving the same divine purposes that motivate angelic ministry. The role of hope in Raphael's eternal mission cannot be overstated, for hope serves as the bridge between present reality and future promise, enabling people to endure current difficulties while working toward better outcomes. Every person who maintains hope in the face of seemingly impossible circumstances becomes an agent of the divine healing that refuses to accept defeat, a witness to the ultimate victory of love over all forms of opposition. Young people, in particular, serve crucial roles in Raphael's eternal mission, carrying forward the vision of complete healing into generations that will see its fuller realization. Their idealism, energy, and refusal to accept that this is just the way things are often drive innovations and social movements that address problems their elders had learned to tolerate. Supporting and guiding young people becomes a form of participation in the eternal healing mission that will outlast our individual lifetimes. The personal dimension of Raphael's eternal mission involves every believer's call to become instrument of divine healing in their immediate sphere of influence, whether through professional healthcare work, volunteer service, simply treating family members with greater kindness, or maintaining faith during personal struggles. Each person has opportunities to participate in the cosmic restoration project that defines angelic ministry. The promise of Raphael's ultimate success in his healing mission provides hope that transcends individual circumstances and even historical periods. Regardless of how overwhelming current problems may seem, regardless of how slow progress appears, regardless of how many setbacks occur along the way, the divine commitment to complete restoration remains unshakable. This eternal perspective transforms present suffering from meaningless tragedy into purposeful preparation for glory that exceeds our current capacity to imagine. The culmination of Raphael's mission will reveal that every act of healing, every moment of protection, every instance of guidance contributed to the grand design of universal restoration. Nothing will prove to have been wasted. No suffering will remain unredeemed. No tear will go unnoticed or uncomforted. The divine physician, who has walked alongside humanity throughout history, will finally see his work completed in the resurrection of all things to their intended perfection, as our journey through the sacred story of Raphael draws to its gentle close. Let yourself rest in the profound truth that has woven itself through every chapter of this ancient narrative. You are not alone in your struggles, not forgotten in your pain, not abandoned in your deepest need. The same divine physician who walked dusty roads with young Tobias, who touched blind eyes with healing grace, who bound demons and blessed marriages, continues his ministry of restoration in your life today. Picture yourself as a traveler arriving safely at journey's end, carrying with you not just the memories of places you've been, but the deeper assurance that you were never truly traveling alone. Every step of your path has been watched over by one whose love for you predates your birth and will extend beyond your last breath. The protection you may have attributed to luck or coincidence, the healing you thought came purely through medical intervention, the guidance you credited to your own wisdom, all these bore the invisible touch of angelic care. In the quiet spaces of your heart, where doubts whisper and fears gather like shadows, let Raphael's presence shine with the gentle light that has comforted millions across the centuries. His healing touch is not reserved for biblical heroes or medieval saints, but extends to every soul who opens themselves to receive divine grace. Your wounds, whether visible or hidden, whether fresh or ancient, fall within the scope of his compassionate ministry. The stories you have heard tonight are not merely historical accounts from distant times and foreign places, but invitations to recognize similar grace unfolding in your own experience. The God who sent Raphael to guide Tobias is the same God who provides guidance for your decisions. The divine love that healed Tobit's blindness continues to restore sight to those who have lost their way. The protective power that conquered Asmodeus still binds whatever forces would steal your peace or threaten your well-being. As you surrender to sleep, carried by the rhythm of these ancient truths, know that you rest in the same divine care that has sustained humanity throughout every generation. Tomorrow's challenges, whatever they may hold, will not find you undefended. Tomorrow's opportunities, however they may unfold, will not catch heaven by surprise. You are held in love that will never let you go, guided by wisdom that will never lead you astray, healed by grace that will never run out. Sleep peacefully, beloved soul, surrounded by the gentle presence of the eternal healer whose ministry knows no end.